If we want to make this movement succeed, people need to be able to sustain themselves. I just think it's important to know where your passion lies, what's going to make you happy. Because if you're thinking that, oh, I can make the most money doing farmers markets and you're miserable, it doesn't matter. This work is too hard to not have fun. It's the inherent nature of farming that it's seasonal cash flow. It's not just seasonal production, but you're paying for things 3 to 6 months before you're getting paid for anything. So you have to be in a position to float that. Money in the bank doesn't mean you've got money to spend. Ultimately, we're more than farmers. We're more than producers. We're business people. If we want to make a sustainable movement of small market gardeners,
they can't all burn out.
They can't burn out.
Welcome to the Market Gardener Podcast, where we believe that small-scale farming is changing the world. Join us for insightful conversations with people who are working to build a better future. A future with less mass production and more production by the masses. The revolution is in the field. Let's get digging. This episode is brought to you by our friends at the Real Organic Project. Okay, guys, we're on today. We are having, I would say, one of our most important guests so far on the podcast.
That was going to be my opening if I had one. The most important topic we could talk about.
Exactly.
Oh, it is so important.
Yeah, it's so important. And you just came out with a new book. It's kind of it's not a rewrite, but it's a revisit of your first book that a lot of the farmers in my time have read and learned from. So, Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Talk about numbers.
Yeah.
Sexiest.
Business.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and last night I learned from her. She was having a meal. Yesterday she was with Dan Brisebois. They had a meal here with the husband and wives.
Dan Brisebois was here too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I learned that Julia is also a former chef and cook.
Yes.
And she loves food. And so we're on the same
Absolutely.
numbers and food.
I'm sort of like both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, growing the food all the way to the table.
Well, where food and business meet is the farm. Well, I guess in the restaurant.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Can I steal that quote?
Sure. I haven't really thought it through. Is it actually good? I don't know. Yeah. Shall I start us off?
Yes.
So, Julia, I wanted to start by asking you to paint us a picture of two different farms.
Okay.
One where they're total business gurus.
Yep.
And they're just killing it from that end. And, you know, what does it look like? What are the common successes and trends you see in these people? What does their life look like? And to contrast, a second farm where they don't know anything about business. They're breezing right by it. They're not thinking about it. They're still farming.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how successful they are, but what does their life
They're
look
working
like?
hard.
What does
they're working hard.
So can you paint us a picture of those two farms?
Sure. Yeah. So, well, it's funny. I also want to paint the farm in the middle who is not looking at their numbers, but they got lucky. So they think they don't have to look at their numbers. But I would say, for me, it's sort of like a state of mind and a calm that, you know, there's relaxed, you know what you're doing, you know what's working, you know what's not working, you know how to figure it out. You know, I'm sort of waffling back and forth between the numbers farmer and the not numbers farmer. But, you know, the numbers farmer, and I worked with two farms in the same region that were experiencing the same drought one year. And one farm was crushing it because they had planned ahead. They had the appropriate irrigation. And the other farm did not have the appropriate irrigation because they just weren't saving. They didn't see the value. They couldn't get their act together to have the money to take out the loan. And so when the drought hit, they just weren't prepared with the appropriate irrigation. Now, of course, they both suffered that year, but the farm that had irrigation was doing better. And the farm that had irrigation had planned, they knew their numbers, they knew how to save, they knew what they could afford. And so it just makes the stressful times less stressful. And also the farms that know their numbers know where to focus their energies. So I think a lot of farmers focus on the top line revenue, and the successful farmers are looking at their profit. So, you know, tomatoes bring in $4 a pound or $6 a pound or whatever number that's amazing. But the labor costs, the input costs, you know, starting tomatoes from seeds and hardening them off and transplanting them and trellising them and all the things take so much time that the profit isn't really that fantastic. By contrast, it's like if you don't know the profits, you're just like, oh my God, I make so much more money at the farmer's market. The prices at the farmer's market are double what I can sell wholesale. And they're just, you're spending 15 hours at a farmer's market with 2 employees as opposed to selling wholesale where you're like, okay, I don't get the same price, but I know I'm spending less time and time is limited and I can do other things as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like numbers, tell you where to focus, tell you what's working, help you to prepare for the future, to be more profitable. And actually, sorry, go ahead.
Would you agree that it's like in training, Chris, what you don't measure, you can't grow or evolve or track. It starts with measuring it. It starts by looking at numbers on a frequent basis because that's what kind of gets you the financial acumen that you kind of need to know where you are and where you're going.
And I think farmers are used to that. I mean, you track your harvest, you track your yields. You say, okay, the pH level was this or the nitrogen was that, and let me make this adjustment, and how does that impact my yield? So, farmers are used to tracking, but we need to do more tracking with the numbers. And, am I hitting my revenue goal? Or am I hitting...
Did I set a revenue goal?
That's an interesting idea. I'm just assuming, of course you set a revenue goal, because if you don't have a revenue goal, how do you know if you get there? But yes, set a revenue goal. And
my God.
And actually before the revenue goal, set a profit goal, set a take-home goal, because your profit and your take-home goal determines what you need in revenue. Because, then you can say, all right, well, my production costs are this, my overhead costs are that, my payroll costs are that. I need to have this much revenue if I'm going to get to this much profit and this much take home.
Have you seen a lot of farms that they even do that?
Of course.
Of course, right? I've seen so many myself.
Yeah.
And we were guilty of that when we started. It took us quite a few years for us to get down to that. But for some reason, when we get into farming, we're thinking this is about work and it's about soil and it's about ecology and it's about community, and it's but it's about numbers.
Of course, and I think people get into farming because they want to be outside. They don't want to work at a desk. It's like if I wanted to work at a desk, I would have been an accountant. I would have done all these other things. I would have done all these other things, but people are farming because they don't want to do those things. But
it's so satisfying.
The farming or the numbers?
When you finally get to a point where you're looking at your farm through numbers, and for me, it's like brushing your teeth. It's like, would you go to bed one night perhaps? Okay, you forgot, you're too drunk, whatever.
Yeah.
But every night, not brushing your teeth, not flossing. Come on.
Well, it's funny.
It's hygiene.
I worked with this one farmer, and it was funny. We did a lot of work on his QuickBooks. We cleaned it up. We separated out the numbers by enterprise. We separated his numbers by sales channel. So we could really drill down, what are your profitable products? What are your profitable sales channels? And, we put in a lot of work to do the cleanup, but then we sat down. It was an hour call. And in 1 hour, we're like, okay, these are your profitable products. These are your profitable sales channels. If you want to grow your business, you want to do a little more sales here and a little more products there. And we were able to put together a formula of what sales mix he needed, what sales channels he needed to achieve his profit goal.
That took 1 hour?
It took 1 hour because we had the numbers organized.
Yeah.
But it takes the back work.
They had the back
if you haven't organized your expenses by product or by sales channel, but that's just a daily habit. It's not like, I need to spend, 2 months or 2 weeks in November, writing out all my numbers. It's like an hour every couple of days and I went to this market. Let me get the numbers in.
Yeah, every week.
Yeah.
Every week's a good routine.
Oh, yeah.
Would you equate running business well and good bookkeeping to kind of the equivalent of having just a really, really clean home and space and working environment where everything is always organized, in order, and it takes away that mental load and mental stress? Is that what you...
Yeah.
Is that what is there to be said about how much the mental load is lightened by good bookkeeping? Because you would explain this farmer in 1 hour you were able to sort out what is actually profitable, what's not. And to me, that sounds like a relaxed
I know.
state to be in, to just be like, I know.
Yeah.
I know what the deal is. I'm not guessing about anything.
And that's what's amazing. I mean, it does, I think we spend so much time spinning our wheels because we don't know it works. And we're just, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see, does that work? Does this work? And we don't have a system to track, was it successful? Mm-hmm. What does success mean for me? If you don't know what success means. But I also want to go back to your point about having an organized house. And I think about Ben Hartman's book, The Lean Farm, and having everything in its place. And when you have everything in its place, you know where to go for this. You know where to go for that, and everything goes back. And I think the same thing is true with your numbers. You know where to look for that answer because everything sort of is organized. For example, with the chart of accounts, which is sort of the structure by which you do your bookkeeping. So all of my seed expenses go into the seed expense category. All my field supplies go into the field supply category. And some farmers are just like shoving it in there, like just
not sorting it.
Not sorting it or not sorting it well. So they might have a category for supplies that are office supplies, selling supplies, field supplies, greenhouse supplies.
Attire.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Supply.
And, then you, at the end of the year, you're looking at your numbers and you're like, holy cow, I spent a lot of money on supplies.
But where?
And, now you're sort of looking at all of your expenses and it's 3 pages long and you're like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so you don't know what to change because you don't know your numbers because everything is sort of all over the place. So if you're organizing your numbers, you know where to look to say, oh, wow, that was a little bit out of control. What happened this year? What can I do differently next year?
So is that like the first step? Like you need to at least have a good chart.
Yes.
And that's consistent. That's
Yep.
classic.
Yep.
So that you can compare things with other farms, with other numbers. But just like you're not totally off.
And I mean, with your own numbers, I think it's important to set benchmarks for yourself. Because every farm is so different, and and maybe less so for market gardeners that are at a certain scale. But with the farms that I work with, they're 5 acres or 10 acres, they're diversified veg, or they're veg and livestock, or they're livestock, or they're close to a major city, so real estate is crazy expensive, but they have a good market, or they're in the country where land is affordable, but they don't have a good market. So the economics of each farm is different. Mm-hmm. So I'm always hesitant to say, oh, you should benchmark to this.
Okay, so it's comparing to yourself.
Right.
And to your goal.
Correct. So you set your profit goal and then you can sort of finesse the numbers. It's like, okay, if I want this profit and I can do this much in revenue because I have this much land, then I need to keep my production costs here. I need to keep my labor costs there. Mm-hmm. My overhead costs have to be here. So you know what you need to work towards to get to your profit goal.
Okay, guys, everyone listening here, the educator in me, if you are not doing this on your farm, this episode is for you. You need to make sure that you realize this. This is super important stuff. This is like the basic, but it changes. It changes the game completely. Yeah. When you start to measure things, clarity comes out of it.
It sounds, I keep thinking the analogy in my head is checking your books, doing that weekly task is really the equivalent of cleaning.
Yeah.
Like dusting. When you don't do that, dust is on everything and then it piles up and piles up. And it's like dust in your brain, dust on your money, dust on your...
And clustering. Just like having stuff that's there and you're not sorted and it's like there's too many.
And it's kind of like the less likely you are to do it or the less... part of you it is, the more important it actually is that you do it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Like the type of person that is the most resistant is maybe the one who needs it the most. Because I don't know if that's
Have
true.
you seen people that overdo it? That they're so much in the office that they're not farming and their numbers are not there? Is that possible?
I don't think I've ever seen that scenario, but I do see farmers that are into the numbers. They start to see the magic, so they want to keep up with it. But to your point, if you're entering your numbers into your bookkeeping system once a week, one example, a farmer client said to me, it's like, if you haven't hit your sales goal for the month or for the week, you know exactly how much you need to hustle. If you're not entering your sales on a weekly basis and you miss the mark, you don't know until November. And, if you're only entering in your receipts once a month, then you sit down at your desk at the end of the month and you're like, oh, mother.
Too late.
Too late. It's like I'm overwhelmed. Number one, it's overwhelming, so you're less likely to do it. And number two, your opportunity to course correct has passed. If you miss your sales goal, there's not a lot you can do in November. If you realize you're missing your sales goal in June or July, you can
still do it.
You still have time to hustle. But I think, it's funny, you're talking about the people who least want to do it or the people who most should do it. And I do think it comes down to mindset. And, they say procrastination is the avoidance of negative emotion. So it's not time management, it's avoiding the hard things.
Yeah.
So
because you're not familiar with them, it's foreign. Numbers, they don't talk to everyone. Numbers, some people are turned off by them.
Yeah, and maybe you had a bad teacher in grade school who they taught new math or Russian math, or I don't even know what the math types are now, but
now they teach farm business,
Yeah,
in math when
they should.
I know, right?
They should.
Cash flow.
Yeah,
but you're right about that, because I had a bad, I wasn't good in math, and I think I'm good in math. It's just the way it happened. Like, people were faster than me, and I was always behind. And the teacher would poke on me and say, "Hey, you're always behind." That kind of
it weighs on you.
It weighs on you, and then you think numbers are not for me, but actually, numbers are magical. They're amazing.
Yeah,
and it's like discovering a old ancient, wisdom.
Yeah.
I was so in my that happened to me, Chris, in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. Like, seeing how everything aligns with numbers, like you forecast something and then it happens, so close.
Yeah.
And
how
it's
did
like,
it happen?
oh my God, how did that happen?
Yeah.
It's magical.
Well, you set the intention, you worked out the numbers, and you said this is how it's going to work. But it's interesting. You were talking about that they're called mental models, and it's the story you tell yourself of I'm not good with numbers, and how do we rewrite the story that we tell ourselves that I am good with numbers. It's just I had a crappy teacher in third grade.
Yeah.
It's not me, it's them. And and I think it's hard in grade school because you've got 30 students, and there's only so many different ways you can explain a single concept, but we all learn differently. We all absorb information differently. So figuring out what's going to resonate with you to understand the numbers. And also, it's funny, one of the things so I'm working on a new book with your good friend, Dan Brisebois, who's now my good friend too.
I heard that yesterday.
Yes. And, one of the things that we were talking about, and I talk about a little bit in the farmer's office, is bringing joy to the work. That if you can layer fun things in with the not as fun things, if you're dreading the office work, it's like, what can you do to make it fun? Whether it's a beverage or music.
Yeah, the donut.
That's interesting. I'm always curious.
The drink, right?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the bourbon.
Oh, nice. Love that.
So I do my bookkeeping at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening when it's appropriate to have a bourbon.
Yeah.
And then I can sort of like calm my brain down and just sort of plug away at my numbers and get everything entered in.
As you both have said more than once, it's magic. So you don't need to be that perfectly sharp and analytical in that moment, because there's magic going on in the business.
There is. And it's interesting because when I first started this work with farmers, I had just graduated from business school. I'd been teaching accounting at a college and graduate level for 2 years. So I was very academic in how I thought about numbers and bookkeeping, and I was teaching things, very precisely. And then after a while, you're like, it doesn't have to be this hard. Like, let's strip it down to the bare bones. Like, what do you need to do to make it work? We don't need to have perfect. We need to have good enough so that you can answer your questions.
How did you find your way into farming?
It was a very direct route because I started out in the aviation industry. I was getting my pilot's license, and you can already see the thread.
Yes, I already see the thread. Do you see the thread, Chris?
You crashed in a field and decided to stay there?
I love it.
Actually, there is a thread, believe it or not. So my degree was in aviation psychology, and it's thinking about the human factor in aviation and flying airplanes. That, you've got this, 200-ton behemoth instrument that we're, small little people are controlling somehow. And we designed the instrument panel so that a human can control it. We have hydraulics so that a human can control it, because otherwise it wouldn't work. That does tie into my work today, creating systems that a human can do, as opposed to, some,
big something.
Behemoth something. But so I was working in the aviation industry, and I think ultimately I'm not an office person. And so I went from studying to be a pilot, realizing that was not my place. I went to culinary school, which was my place. And after I worked in restaurants, actually I worked at one of the very first farm-to-table restaurants in the U.S. The first one was in California, Alice Waters.
You worked there?
I did not work at Alice Waters Chez Panisse, but I did work for Nora Poulin in Washington, D.C. So she was the other farm-to-table person.
When was this about?
This was in 1993.
Early days.
Yeah.
That was a great year.
Movement.
Yeah. That was before farm-to-table was a thing.
Yeah.
But, she was buying whole animals from farmers. She had her mushroom farmer and her tomato farmer and the chicken farmer. And, so I learned how to cook just getting my ingredients from all the specialists in the region. We'd buy the whole animal. We had a butcher on staff, so we'd break down the animals. And, once a month we'd have a kidney special. And, twice a month we would have liver. And we had a lot of stew meat because we had the whole animal. So it was a fun place to learn how to cook and learn about food.
You said you were there for like 12 years?
Oh, not at this particular restaurant.
Yeah, but like in the restaurant last night, you said to me.
Yeah, so I've cooked professionally for 12 or 15 years, I think.
Wow.
Although now I'm like, I need to double check my numbers. But my boss at Restaurant Nora, we both left the restaurant industry. He bought 100 acres in southern Maryland and started an organic farm. And I moved to Boston and continued working in restaurants and catering for a few years before I left the restaurant business too. But it was through my friendship with Brett that I learned about farming. And when I realized that, so I was working for a caterer, or actually I should back up a little bit. I had my own catering business and I was doing corporate team building through cooking. And it was a lot of fun, but I wasn't making enough money. So I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to make money. So I went to business school and I figured out how to make money cooking, but making money cooking is kind of soul crushing. So I did it for 2 years and I said, screw that. I was invited to teach accounting at the school where I got my MBA, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you think I can do this?
Wow.
And I'm going to trust you that you know what you're doing because I don't think I can teach accounting.
That's to graduate students.
Well, I started the undergraduate and then they promoted me to graduate students.
Okay, so you knew what you were doing.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then I started my consulting business and I thought that I was going to work with restaurants and with chefs. But the pool of consultants working with restaurants and chefs is quite robust. And there was a dearth of consultants working with farmers. And I had that experience. And so I just started picking up a farm client here and there. I'd call up my friend Brett. It's like, oh my God, what are they talking about with blah, blah, blah? And he would explain everything to me. And I learned all about the farm terms. And, when I worked with a livestock farm, they were always very patient with me. So I learned about, boars and sows and gilts and farrowing and, all the different terms for livestock. And so, yeah, I've been working with farmers since 2008. So
you really found quite a niche, I feel like, which is almost surprising to say because you'd think there'd be more people talking about business in farming, but I don't think there's that many books like your book. Do you know?
I don't think so. I think Richard Wiswall wrote the first seminal book.
It was vaguer. It was more like it was more about how to set up your farm.
Yeah, he definitely had a chapter on bookkeeping, and the way I describe it is that if his book was, Farm Business Management 101, mine is 201.
Yeah.
So it just takes it a little bit farther. And I think his book is fantastic. And, his tools on how to do crop costing analysis, I think, are terrific. And the cost of equipment, you can track how much each equipment costs for a minute, and then how many minutes are you using it for, which is next level.
Yeah. It was a bigger farm. It was like for us in market gardening, like that was kind of over the top.
Yeah.
Because we can't measure every minute of everything because we're doing so many different things in a
Yeah.
day. And it's rare that we do a chore for like 4 hours.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, and truthfully, when I saw that, I was surprised that people were doing that. Because I'm like asking farmers, those charts and tables that he lays out are amazing. And are people really doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Yeah, I've met a couple of farmers who have, but I've tried to streamline the process, thinking about it in broad brushstrokes. It's like, all right, this is your equipment cost. Let's just say, $5,000 or whatever the number is. What percentage of that do you want to allocate to this crop or that crop? How much each crop takes of different equipment and how much time you're using it, and just ballpark it.
Exactly. Don't need to measure everything.
Yeah.
Can we play a game?
Sure.
You're gonna.
Are we doing shots of bourbon?
No. Well, no. The game is already fun. We don't need the bourbon. What I want to do, and this will allow us to go dig deep into many business elements, but let's say that I want to start a farm, and I want you to help me figure out. Well, and it's gonna be hypothetical. So my first question is actually whether I even should start the farm. Like, do clients come to you and ask, starting there, they're just, I want a farm, but I don't. So can we start this conversation first? I want a farm because I want to be outside and I want to be my own boss. I'm pretty open to growing all kinds of things. Where should I start?
How much money do you want to make every year?
Okay, that's a good first question.
Because if you're going to tell me that you want to make $100,000 a year, maybe this isn't the place for you.
Let's say I want to make 60.
Okay.
And you want your truck to be an expense. You want your phone to be an expense. You want the mortgage of the farm to be in that, not considered 60 net.
Yeah, 60
plus
net.
Everything paid for.
Well,
so that's my goal, I would say.
Okay, so I'm going to clarify what you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've been sort of noodling around, and I'm getting a little bit persnickety about, that it's not net, it's take home.
Take home. Okay.
Because net income still needs to cover your debt service, your mortgage, your interest payments if you have a loan.
Okay, so we're talking about take home in your pocket.
Correct.
60 in your pocket after everything paid is a pretty nice.
That's a very nice number.
That's a very nice number.
So let's say that's what I say I want. Maybe I'm going to find out I'm wrong going forward. But
how long do you have to get there?
Oh, good question. Well, right now I have a job. Mm-hmm. I suppose I could start doing this on the side. I don't know how much.
Yeah, but do you want to make $60,000 next year, or is this sort of like I want to do $60,000 in 5 years?
Let's say it's in 5 years.
Okay. All right. We can work with that.
Because 60K next year would be very improbable.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great.
And
good to know.
What kind of runway do you have?
Runway?
Let's be honest. You're not going to make money tomorrow.
Okay.
It's going to take 3 years.
It's going to take 3 years, and you still need to pay your bills. You still need to live somewhere. You still need to feed yourself.
Yep.
Do you have any runway?
Not much.
How much? You need to be precise.
10 grand.
You have 10K.
Let's say I have 10K in the bank. Let's say.
And do you have a family member that contributes to your household?
Yeah, they contribute as well, yeah.
Okay. Because I think the first thing is, do you have the capacity to start the farm financially? Can you live? Because, I don't need to tell you, farming can beat you up. And if you're stressed about money, that's just sort of another layer that just makes it that much more difficult. So making sure that you have the runway to get to the place where you can be profitable, then we can start to lay out a plan. What does that look like? And we can start to I mean, the hard thing is when you're just starting out, you don't know any of your numbers. So,
of course,
sometimes it's like, just start. What's the minimum you can do to get started with the minimum investment just to start figuring out your numbers? What does it cost to do this? And what does it cost to do that? And what are your markets like? And can you sell at the price that you think you can sell? And just sort of figuring out all the little pieces. And then in the second year, then we can start to get a little more organized with the numbers. These are your costs. Is this realistic? In the first year, your production cost may be 70% of revenue, which is not sustainable. But we can start to refine the systems and think about what the goal is and, what do you need to do to get your costs down, which is likely efficiencies in the farm, better cost controls and, thinking about what you're purchasing. But I probably shouldn't say this, but I do believe in just sort of jumping in and starting. But also making sure that you have enough runway that you're not going to get yourself in trouble if it doesn't work instantly.
Okay, I'll play the game
I have
also.
more questions too,
But I have other answers too. So, how many employees do you want? How big is the farm? How many times do you want to be selling? Do you want a wholesale? Do you want a direct sale? Farmers market, CSA? What's all of these things will play out.
Yeah.
Is it 2 acres or is it 10 acres? Is it 5 people working with you?
For a lot of those details, I feel like I don't know quite yet.
Okay, you're not ready for...
I feel like I'm still at the that stage.
Well, it's amazing because I think that the book that Dan and I are currently writing is asking all of those questions.
Is it called The Hard Questions?
Maybe that's the title. Well, it's funny. We have a call with our publisher in a few days from now to discuss the title of the book. So maybe we'll propose the hard
Asking
question.
the hard question.
Yeah.
I want to, can you help me figure out, should I quit my job and go all in tomorrow? Because I think I might be able to do that. I think I'm open maybe to the idea of getting loans and things to help. Or I'm also open to a completely other version, which is I take 10 years, but I really go slow to get to my 60. Because right now my job is making me enough money, but I'm just not happy in it.
Yeah.
And so I want to get to this farm.
That's a fictional story, is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's like, you're
am I losing my partner here?
No, the entire thing is fictional.
Well, it's funny. So my father worked as a lawyer for 25 years, and he started a magazine in the early 70s. And he started, working from 8 a.m. to noon at the house. And then at noon, he would go into the office. And he probably did that for 10 or 15 years to get the business launched. So he started to slowly scale back the law practice as the magazine business took off. And I think there's value in that, to start slower and not give up your salary. Farming is hard. And I think the biggest challenge about farming is how cyclical the cash flow is, because you have all the inputs, all the expenses are, February to June, and then the revenue doesn't really start coming in full force until July or August. Mm-hmm. So this cash flow cycle can be really challenging, and it can take several years to get into that rhythm of the cash flow cycle. And I'm curious, what do you advise your farmer students in terms of the cash flow cycle to get into that rhythm?
The reality is, in my teaching, I've been kind of vague about all of that because I've always thought, there's other people out there that have this skill set that can help you with numbers. Like, I am there to help you with market gardening per se. Yeah. Let's say on Chris's question, I'd be like, okay, year 5, how big is the farm? Is it 2 acre and there's 4 people working and you're doing $250K in sales? Yep. That's the kind of picture that you need in your mind. Yep. And then the numbers reverse engineer from that. Yep.
And that's exactly right. And, and that's actually what Dan and I are writing in our book. It's like, it starts off, where do you want to be 5 years from now? And if you want to be, 250,000 in revenue, then what are the graduated steps that you need along the way? And if you want to be someday at, 10 employees, I'm making up numbers. Yeah. What are the graduate steps along the way?
How many greenhouses? How big the washback? All these questions will be determined. But also, Chris, to answer you, it's like this number, like if you're part-time, in my opinion, there's two things. When you're full-time, you're better because you're focused and you're doing it. However, setting up the farm, building the greenhouses, building the wash pack, all of this could be done part-time.
Yep.
While you still have a job, because these are the things that they're expensive and it's like sunk investments. Like you're not going to get that back.
Well, the other thing that's challenging is that you need to finance it.
Yeah.
Like the wash pack room costs money. And if you need to get a loan, the lenders want to see your payback capacity. Mm-hmm. And if you're not generating revenue from the farm yet, then it's like, hard. All right, why should I give you money? You don't have a proven track record yet.
You're taking too much risk. The bank is taking too much risk.
Right. So
runaway. But that's something that I want us to remember that word, Chris. Runaway. Because this is the piece of the puzzle that I feel many growers don't understand.
Yeah.
But we could come back to that later on.
And can you help me decide what to grow? Because I'm quite open. I want to grow food.
Yeah.
I'm very open to all kinds of veggies, all kinds of fruit, even meat. Mm-hmm. I think I want a diversified farm, but maybe not too crazy. I'm not fully certain about that, but how can I better choose these things? I know that might be a big question.
Well, it's a big question. I'm not sure that that's my question. Yeah. I think that's somebody else's question because I think there's different skill sets that are required. There's different markets and passions. And I mean, not everybody is passionate about livestock, and I think there's value in diversified vegetable and livestock, but also consider that you don't want to spread yourself too thin, that it's better to start small and add things, because if you have chickens, meat birds and layers and vegetables and flowers and microgreens, you can't build efficiencies at anything because you're running around trying to do everything. So, I'd suggest that you start with one thing or maybe two things, and then you can layer on more aspects as you build your muscle memory and your skill sets on the first thing that you want to do.
Okay, so I want diversified vegetables, and I have 1 acre of space. Okay. I know this now. Okay. Where what next?
And you're doing microgreens.
I don't have to know if I want to do microgreens.
Okay, you don't want to do microgreens because that's a great cash flow.
Yeah,
but microgreens are great for cash flow because you can, in 35 days you have.
Unless I see through a bunch of numbers analysis that I just need to do it in order to get going. But where do I go from there?
You need a shrink.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. I mean, there's two ways to think about it. I mean, I feel like, the Market Gardener Institute is going to give you guidance on how you can maximize revenue for a certain number of acres or a certain size. But on the flip side of it, it's like, okay, if I've got this many acres or if I have 1 acre and my bed size is this, then I need to be generating this much revenue per bed. And then you can start to benchmark the different crops. Can I reasonably grow this many carrots to get to that benchmark of what I need to achieve in revenue? Can I grow this many peppers or tomatoes or squash to achieve that revenue benchmark that I've set? Because this is how much land I have. This is how much revenue I want. So now I can, do the basic math of revenue per bed or row or, plot or.
Yep.
Yeah. So I know I want to get to that 60K in the next 5 years, and I want to grow diversified vegetables.
1 acre is going to be hard. I think you should be on 2 acres. And you should have 4 people working with you.
All right.
So you have that formula all set.
Well, it's because I've done it so many times. Yeah. So it's in the end, it ends up being that.
Yeah.
If everyone's doing the same thing, we end up.
Yeah.
So it's very practical for me. It's not a model that's constructed on theories.
But that's kind of like what franchising is. It's like you sort of have the model that works. It's like, here's the footprint of the restaurant or, whatever. And if you do this footprint and you do these things, you will achieve that mark.
When we started to doing, and I don't want to cut on the story, the questions, just as a sidelines, we started doing farm profiles here at the Institute.
Yeah.
And so far, when we look at the upper tier, which is what I'm interested in, because I know these farmers, they have the right systems, they're using the right tools, they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And they're getting to about a third. So 1/3 is salaries paid out to people working with them. 1/3 is cost of operation, and 1/3 is
Profit.
net in your pocket. What's the other word you said for that?
Take home.
Take home, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Which is a lot, because compared that to other farming operations, it's rare that you'll have such a high number
Yeah.
take home.
So 1/3 is for production costs and for interest, debt service.
Exactly. Yeah.
And reinvesting in the farm and equipment and all those things. Amazing. And do you have benchmarks that drill down further into that? Like, within the overhead, what percentage is production versus overhead versus debt service?
No, but that could be the next step. We're getting more and more numbers.
Yep.
And I want to validate with the farms because it's important, because I'm looking at the upper tier.
Yep.
Because what I want to do with with these numbers is to give a possible template of what's, like, Chris, like, what could you expect? Let's say you do everything semi-right, you're on the right way. What's possible?
I'd also be curious to know what type of investments that they made. Did they borrow money to purchase the greenhouse and the equipment and the wash pack shed? Or did they borrow money? Did they have money from family members or from off-farm jobs? Because I think how the startup costs are financed can really impact that story of how they generate take-home. And, it may be that if you can self-finance the startup because, you've got a rich uncle, or you saved up from an off-farm job, or you have a spouse that, or, whatever, maybe you can get there in 5 years. But if you get financing and you have debt service, it may take 10 years to get to that.
Yeah. There's a few things about that. First of all, one of the problems that I see when we consult with especially younger, but not, it's like they don't want to borrow. Yeah. That's like the first hurdle.
Yep.
They don't want to borrow. And if they want to borrow, they're not thinking about their runaway.
Yep.
That's the piece that nobody thinks about. They're thinking, I'll start my farm and I'll make money. No. You're going to lose money for 3 years.
Yeah.
So how are you going to pay for that?
Well, and some people, I mean, it goes to risk tolerance also. I have a very low risk tolerance. And some people just, I'm working with one farmer, and, she just built up a new processing facility. She's doing livestock value-added products. And, she's already got so much debt, and she's like, oh, I'm just going to take on some more
she's
debt.
taking risks.
And I'm like, I'm feeling so queasy. But she's fine. And, she's paying her debt, and she's worked it out the numbers that she can afford it. And having $2 million in debt doesn't make her sick.
Because she's doing the math.
Yeah, she's doing the math.
That if she wasn't, she'd be stressed as hell. She has clarity on where she's going.
Yeah, and, we went through the numbers. It was like, okay, if you want to take on this loan, you need to generate additional profits of, and I don't remember the number, but you need additional profits of 60,000. And if you're selling your products at this price and you have these costs, you need to sell this many units to get to that profit goal. And if you're going to sell this many units, then it's this many per week, and you need to have the labor to produce that many per week. Do you have capacity to find 3 employees or 4 employees or whatever that number was? Because we now know you need to do this volume to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And we were able to really break it down to, how many units per week does she need to produce to get to that goal.
Which would be, Chris, to answer your question, what you would need to be doing also. What do you need to produce every week to get to your goal at year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5? And you need to go in details about how many bunches of carrots per week are you selling.
That actually is my next question. I'm ready for my year 1. I want to know how much should I plan to make that first year, and then how do I then go about choosing, how much I need to plant and make that plan and make a forecast for year 1, because I don't have numbers yet. But I also don't. I haven't decided if I think CSA or market or all of the above is what I want to do. I guess I want to know now what maybe is going to be more lucrative. If there's any way to kind of forecast better and help me decide what.
I think that I wouldn't focus so much on what would be more lucrative, because I think that you can make a profit at CSA and at wholesale and at retail.
Okay.
I think it's more about what you want to do and how you want to operate your business and how do you want to be in the community. Some people love talking to their customers. They love being connected, and going to the farmer's market every week just totally juices them up, and they're so happy to make that connection. And other people are like, yeah, I just want to grow flowers or vegetables. I really don't want to talk to people. And wholesale may be a better fit for their personality.
I'm glad you say that, because I don't want to talk to people. So,
Yeah.
so then I probably shouldn't maybe do farmer's market or get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
And I just think it's important to know where your passion lies, what's going to make you happy. Because if you're thinking that, I can make the most money doing farmer's markets and you're miserable, it doesn't matter. It's, we need to have, this work is too hard to not have fun, and if everything is a grind, then it's not what you should be doing. Certainly there's always going to be things that suck, but we want to set ourselves up for success and minimize the succotation.
Yeah. And at this point in the process, how do I even really determine a financial feasibility? Like how can I figure out that I'm likely to succeed in this venture, or at least where to start on that?
Yeah. I think it's really hard when you don't have numbers to work from. Certainly JM is putting together profiles from the successful farms that he's worked with and the Martin Gardner Institute has worked with, and I can look at the farm numbers of farmers that I've worked with and say, all right, you need to spend this on this and this, this is what it kind of looks like. But until you get into your field with your soil conditions and your market conditions, we can't really say, which is why I think it's helpful to just start to kind of get your numbers and, what's going to grow well in your climate. Because I can be like, oh, yeah, you really should be growing okra and sweet potatoes. Those are the most profitable crops.
They're not.
But I'm in Canada, so that is not going to work for me.
Exactly.
So you have to consider what's going to work for your climate.
Yeah.
But that's where it becomes difficult to, make blanket suggestions of what works and what doesn't work because of all the factors that go into each farm.
Yeah.
Would you give him the advice of find a farm that you really like what they're doing and kind of see what they're doing and then copycat that?
Well, and it's funny because as you say that, I made the assumption that you have skills farming, that you've worked on other farms.
Yeah.
And you're not just sort of going at this blind and like, oh, that looks fun. Let me try farming.
And I must say, I'm a strange hypothetical person so far because I am very unsure about what I want to do. And yet I'm coming to you with these questions. But I was just putting it out there to kind of even imagine that part of a process where someone, all they know is they want to farm, but they really have yet to think it any further through, and just get an idea of how they should at least start to think about it and what should they expect. Anyway.
But I think the hypothetical scenario that you put out there, what I was struggling with is that you don't know what you want to do yet.
That's what I mean. That's why it's a strange...
and so it's like getting clarity on what you want to do, what do you want to grow? How do you want to live? What quality of life do you want?
How big the farm?
Yeah. And, do you want to manage people or not? You said in your hypothetical scenario that you don't really like people. So maybe you don't want employees.
Yeah.
So you need a scale that's going to be suitable that can be solo operator or maybe, with your spouse. But getting clear on what's important to you is going to drive so many of these questions. And then, certainly the technical skill of what to grow, there's so many resources for that. And, I've put together, financial projections, but without historical numbers, I don't feel comfortable saying, oh, this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
We can try, see what happens.
Yeah.
But there's so many factors that
it's actually after 2-3 years that you become clearer on what you're doing.
Yep.
The first year is kind of like,
yeah.
The second year, it's better.
Yep.
And then by the third year, you have some clarity. You can see where you'll be.
Yep.
And one of the things that I always say, and Chris, that might be good for you in your reflection, is that, perhaps the first 3 years you'll lose money, but then you might be making money for 20 years. And that long-term understanding is not in everyone's mind. Everyone's super short-term and super short-sighted. And that's why borrowing money, like if you pay it back over 10, 12, even 5 years, like it's a good move. You'll use these tools, these infrastructures for all these years, and it's like it's going to give you room to breathe, you know?
You know, it's funny. I was just I spent some time this morning working on the book with Dan, and you know, one of the things I was writing about was making an investment early on in a bookkeeping system. So QuickBooks, which is sort of the industry standard for for bookkeeping, is expensive right now. I mean, and it's just getting more expensive.
It's like $60 a month.
Oh, that's the cheap version.
Oh my goodness.
And obviously Canada has a different pricing structure, but in the US it's 65 for like the mid-grade version. The version for diversified farms is, now 115 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, part of my language is a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
But if you think about this as an investment and not as an expense, and you're making an investment of $1,000 now because in 3 years, when you really need a robust bookkeeping system,
it's going to be set up.
It's going to be set up. You're not going to be spending the time beating your head on the wall trying to figure it out. You've started small with what you need, and you've layered on new skills as you've needed new skills and new features. So in 5 years, you have the bookkeeping system that works for you and your farm, and it wasn't a painful process because you've been building it over the year and you've made the investment. And likewise, just on a day-to-day basis, the bookkeeping system is an investment that if you can figure out how to improve your profits by $2,000, which is nothing.
Yeah.
With good data, you can figure out how to improve your profits by $2,000. You've paid for the bookkeeping system and you're ahead. So it's a worthwhile investment.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at the Real Organic Project, a farmer-led movement working to reclaim what organic really means. Friends, you know that the USDA organic label was once powerful, but let's be honest, today it doesn't always stand for soil-grown food or pastured animals. That's why I love what the Real Organic Project is doing. They've created a free, farmer-driven add-on certification that protects the true value of organic farming. They already certify over 1,000 farms across North America, and they bring together growers who believe in healthy soil, real food, and integrity. Check them out at realorganicproject.org, and don't miss their really cool and really insightful Real Organic podcast with amazing voices like Elliot Coleman, Vandana Shiva, and yes, me too. Thanks, guys, for supporting the podcast. Let's unite, let's come together, and let's stop the co-opting of organic. I think QuickBooks is interesting if you can automate. Like you take a picture of your invoice or of your what's the word?
Receipt.
And then it files it.
Yep.
Like that's worth it. But otherwise, like a simple, even like if a homegrown product, Excel spreadsheets, and then you make the math, and then once a year you go to see the accountant, and then QuickBook for me, like if you're making 100K in sales, not sure, because it's you could be making $1 million and still using that tool. You need to see QuickBooks.
Yeah,
how it's not scale, so you can't stretch it so much.
Yeah, I guess the scenario that you're painting suggests that you're only looking at your numbers once a year, and having.
But you're using your
Excel spreadsheet.
Your spreadsheet. You're kind of seeing things.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because I've worked with farmers that are using the Excel spreadsheets, and they're spending a lot of time doing. It's like, oh, I'm doing a spreadsheet. It's so much easier than QuickBooks, and I see the system that they've set up of downloading their transactions from the bank. Entering that into their spreadsheet, making sure that it's categorized in the right category. And QuickBooks does that a little more efficiently, a little more effectively.
Yes. Is Dan aware of that?
Yeah.
Because Dan was the mastermind of spreadsheets, Dan Brisebois. We're talking about it.
Yeah, no, he's, and actually that's how I connected with him because I heard about the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy, and I'm like, I need to know.
Yeah.
But I think his spreadsheets are more about crop planning than
The numbers.
bookkeeping.
Yeah,
I mean, he
bookkeeping.
uses QuickBooks for bookkeeping.
Okay.
Can you make the case for QuickBooks? Because I know that you are an advisor of QuickBooks, right? And a big fan. And why should a farmer use it? And what kind of superpowers could they gain from using this? Like, what are some of the top highlights? If I'm a farmer and I'm like, I think I should use QuickBooks, I don't know. Convince me.
Okay. So first of all, having your numbers organized in a way that you can access the data. If you have your numbers in a spreadsheet, figuring out a way to access the data, it's not just like, oh, I entered them in. It's like, where am I spending money? And you can do that more quickly with QuickBooks. The other thing I like about QuickBooks is that it's adaptable. So, you start out with your chart of accounts and you say, oh, I want to categorize my expenses this way and that way. And then in a few years, things change and you realize you want to change your thinking. You can change your QuickBooks really easily to update to how your business has evolved. QuickBooks, I think one of the least utilized but most powerful tools in QuickBooks is tracking your sales by products. So when you create an invoice, you can say, I sold 10 bunches of carrots at $3 a bunch, and that automatically converts it to wholesale sales or retail sales. And then you can go back and see how many bunches of carrots did I sell and what average price. And it's like all there, click of a button.
Do you know if it connects with your sales? Is it but not the PTO, but the
POS?
POS.
Point
Like
of
let's say
sale.
you're using Square.
Yep.
At farmers market.
Yep.
Can QuickBook talk to it and then it connects directly?
It can, and you do have to be careful with that one because it can make a mess if you're not careful. There is a system, a process. It's not a hard process. You want to make sure that when you connect your Square POS system to QuickBooks, that all the deposits are made into a clearing account. You don't want to say, oh, I had all this revenue from Square, just deposit whatever Square says into my bank account. In the bookkeeping sense of your bank account.
Because it's not going to balance completely.
Oh, it's going to be a mess. And you're going to drive yourself bonkers trying to clean it up. So you say to Square, record the deposit into this clearing account. I'll do the manual transaction of transferring from the clearing account into my real bank account in QuickBooks because you're going to make a mess. So let's just put it here. We'll keep the mess over here, and then I can keep my regular bank account straight.
Okay.
But you can, and then you have all that data of what you sold, how much, average price, and
what time. It's like it's really good. You see everything.
Yeah, and also, I mean, to be fair, like the POS systems have some great reporting. What did you sell on this day and that day, and how many transactions per hour, and what was your average sale. What I struggle with is when there's too many systems. You've got your POS system where you have your sales and your revenue, and you have your QuickBooks where you have your expenses, and then you have your, beat clock where you're tracking your time over here. And when you have so many systems, they don't integrate well, and you spend more time trying to get the data together. So I do like QuickBooks because it has all the features of, tracking what you sold, tracking your expenses, so you don't have to have multiple systems. But I will say spreadsheets are important.
No. Spreadsheets are a thing of the past. I've never loved. I really. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Does Dan know this?
I'm not sure, but like.
Well, you use them, but now that's
we've been on QuickBooks. We use QuickBooks. It's just like, why reinvent the thing? It's like, yes, so there's a cost to it, but
what are you using spreadsheets for?
Nothing.
What about harvest tracking and production planning?
We use Heirloom, which is the crop planning software at the Institute.
Oh, of course.
That's okay.
That's okay.
No, but it's another software. But it's just in life. Like I use spreadsheet for, let's say I'm doing a project and I want to, I'm building a house and I want to make sure that I have all my costs are. But for managing, I don't think that, spreadsheets are, I think they're a thing of the past. That's my own.
Okay, well, I'm not ready
and
to
I've
go
never
there.
really liked
Spreadsheets.
spreadsheets anyway. I like what they do,
Yeah.
but I don't like I don't like being in them. It's not my forte. And
Well, I will say I do like spreadsheets, and I think as much as I'm a fan of QuickBooks, and I don't know, did I convince you that QuickBooks was the way to go?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm feeling it. Feeling ready.
That
for
would have been
QuickBooks.
awkward. It's like, not convinced.
not taking that.
Okay, I mean, what's the number? If you could pick one major mistake that I'm going to avoid by hopping on QuickBooks, what might one of those top mistakes be?
Oh, the top mistake you're going to make is trying to integrate your POS system with QuickBooks. And
that's the number one.
yeah,
mistake.
and I assume there'll be podcast notes, and I'm going to give you a link to a video tutorial on how to avoid that mistake.
Sure.
Great.
Because I think it's important. I want everybody to avoid this mistake because it's one of those things that gets people really frustrated with QuickBooks and say, screw that, I'm going back to my spreadsheets.
But I want to know what mistake will I avoid by using QuickBooks? Like a top mistake, something that it's very likely that a lot of people are making this mistake and QuickBooks could save them from it. Is there like a top one that comes to mind, or just one of many?
Well, I think it's being able to check your numbers regularly to know
regularity.
Did I, I mean, the example that I think about from a farmer client of mine is I need to hit this revenue goal every month, and I can look mid-month to see how I'm doing and know what I need to do to hit my target. Being able to go to your QuickBooks and see, here is my budget, here's what I'm actually doing, how far off am I, and what can I do today in the middle of the growing season to avoid getting myself into a cash flow jam later on. Making sure that I hit my revenue goal, my profit goal, having access to that data quickly with literally, a few clicks of a button, you're going to know where you are today.
Not to spend too much time on QuickBooks.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk about other things.
But
can we talk about risotto maybe?
Is there other software out there that some farmers use that are popular also in our movement, or is it going to be the industry standard, QuickBooks? And are their prices always going to go higher, or at one point will they understand that for a certain tier, the price point matters?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the price is always going to go up.
Okay,
which it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
and there are new products that are regularly popping up, and I know Ambrook is one of them, and they're really working hard to compete with QuickBooks. Their price point is similar to QuickBooks, and I think they're getting there in terms of being competitive. But QuickBooks still has a lot of features, and I think a lot of folks just don't know all the features. But I do want to say spreadsheets are an important complement to QuickBooks, and creating a cash flow budget in a spreadsheet is really the way to go, because you can test your assumptions, you can test feasibility, you can say, oh, what if my production costs are a little bit higher, or what if my revenue is a little bit lower?
You can play with that.
You can play around, you can pull different levers to see what happens if I do this thing or that thing.
And do you offer templates? Spreadsheet templates?
I do.
You do?
I do. One thing I'm thinking about is it's hard to create templates that work for everybody, because you have 5 line items for your revenue, and somebody else has 10 line items, and I create a template and I don't have enough space for you for whatever. So it ends up being not as robust. But yes, I do have a template, and I'm happy to share that link too.
Okay, because to reinvent a template, that's the part that I don't like. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Like I need to read all these formulas, how you cross them from one sheet to the other, and then you go in them, you play with them, and then you break them, and then.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I think the first rule is, if you get a template, save a copy in a safe place. So if you do break it, you can go back to the original. I like to create a format for templates, and I'm going to do a workshop on this, like how to create your own template, because you can start with your profit and loss out of QuickBooks, and then you have exactly the format that you want, and you're not trying to jam your profit and loss into my template, even though it's more or less right. it's more or less the same, but you don't have to, figure out how to jam it in just the right format. So if you can build your own template from your profit and loss, this is how you do it. You've created your template. Now you can just copy and paste your numbers into your template that's working exactly for you. So I'm going to do that in January.
Got it.
Yeah.
We'll put the notes about
Right.
that if you want to share this with us.
Yes.
Another hypothetical. I'm a farmer that's coming to you. I've been farming for a while, and I am worried that I've gotten into too much debt, and I'm kind of freaking out about it.
Yeah.
And I want help in how to just get out of this stressful zone and know where I'm going. So where do we begin in helping me?
So can you tell me more about your debt?
Well, I've put quite a few greenhouses up in the last year and bought quite a lot of equipment and upgraded my wash pack. Like I did a lot in a short amount of time. And
So your debt is making infrastructure improvements as opposed to taking out operating lines of capital because you haven't been profitable. So I think there's two types of debt challenges that people can get into.
Yeah.
One is because they're using debt to finance the operations and they haven't figured out how to finance through profits.
Okay.
And then there's I invested in more equipment than I can afford.
Right.
And I'm in a jam now.
Okay.
So I would.
Well, in this case, let's say it's infrastructure I've invested in, and I thought that it was just going to cost less, and then it ended up costing more, and now I'm worried about my next year.
Yeah.
So I just want to make myself a plan for how to.
All right. So I'm not going to say I told you so.
Yeah.
That we should have done scenario planning
Okay.
before, because I'm not the kind of person to say I told you so.
But that would have been good if I did.
Yep. So for those people that are thinking about taking on debt right now, I think it's important to figure out how much the debt is going to cost you. So if you take out $20,000, my monthly payments are going to be $500. Therefore, I need to increase my revenue and profits by this.
Okay.
And then in your Excel spreadsheet or your Google sheet, you can do scenario planning and you can say, all right, well, what if the greenhouse costs more? What if my revenue falls short because, I have seed, germination failure or whatever, all the things that can go wrong. And you can do some scenario planning to see what happens if all these things go wrong, because things will go wrong. And you can decide if you have the stomach and the risk tolerance to go forward in that scenario. If, sort of the worst case, you can still eke by, then you can more comfortably make that investment. But you've made the investment and now you're in a jam and you have more debt service than you can afford.
Yeah, and so I guess I know I need to increase my profit.
You have to increase your profit, but there's also strategies to get ahead. So thinking about, if you're in a real cash crunch and struggling to pay your bills, you want to prioritize your bills by what's going to help you keep the lights on. You don't want to piss off your seed supplier because now you don't have seeds to grow food to generate more revenue to get yourself out of a jam. So you want to make sure that you're getting all the cash in that you need to be getting, that your vendors or your customers are all paying you. Look at the debt that you do have and prioritize what you need to pay first in terms of high interest and making sure that you can maintain your operations. You might want to consider a debt consolidation loan. I don't know what opportunities there are in your community for debt consolidation. The other thing to consider is, do you have too much infrastructure that maybe you need to sell something? Because, you bought the brand new John Deere when really, a small piece of equipment would have been okay.
Yeah, or sometimes it's the payroll.
Yeah,
he
was talking about that.
Is the staff perhaps, at a point where they're paid too much for the work that they do? That happens,
Yeah.
Over years, we have staff that are coming back year after year.
Yep.
And now they're at a point where they're paid $25 an hour, but they're doing the same work as somebody that would be doing it at $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. Because, they get better over the years, but at one point,
they peak.
Harvesting salaries is,
Yeah.
there's a limit to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about the word pivot?
Sure.
This is a kind of a word that gets used a lot in business, especially these days, circles.
The
talking
business
about the pivot.
needs to pivot.
The pivot. The pivot, as we say.
Yeah.
It's a the, you know.
The pivot.
I'm wondering, is there kind of how do you find the sweet spot in terms of, is it not the case that some people maybe pivot too much, like they're all over the place, they never really stick with anything through, and then vice versa, people that are just never even realizing they should pivot? And kind of how do you figure out that there's a moment here where you need to adapt, you need to pivot? And I guess secondarily, how do numbers, how does good business thinking also help you with that?
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's different reasons to pivot, and I think pivot came into our lexicon because of COVID, when, restaurants closed and farmers markets, at least in my community, they had all these new procedures around farmers markets. So how farmers reached their customers changed literally overnight. So you had to pivot. So I think pivoting is sort of a quick move that you need to make because things aren't going well. Okay. And, COVID was obvious, but I think sometimes, you need to pivot because a farmer's market isn't doing well anymore. Or one of the things that we were talking about at dinner last night was, CSA models aren't going as well. I think a lot of CSAs are, becoming less popular as more farmers markets become available. So, when you realize that what you've always been doing isn't doing the same thing anymore, then, you need to explore a pivot. I think of pivots as being a very quick decision as opposed to a well thought out strategic change.
An evolution.
Yeah.
Pivot is like, okay, we're doing this, now we're doing that.
Right. It's like, okay, this farmer's market just closed. What are we going to do? We need to find a new market quickly. And I think pivots are, act first, measure later. You don't have time to do a deep analysis, but you need to have the systems in place to see how you're doing and, evolve on the pivot. That, it's like when COVID hit, it's like, all right, I don't have the restaurants. I'm going to try delivery, and I need to see, just start doing deliveries and see what happens and start to measure and refine as things move along, as opposed to measuring and thinking first and, okay, I'm going to go to this farmer's market instead. And how much is it going to cost to get there? And what's my revenue potential? And what do I need to get when I go
That's
there?
usually like in a couple or in a farm, there's usually one person that is more that kind of person. And usually there's somebody that's less like novelty change. It's like, oh my God. It's like, no, we need to do it. Let's go. Yeah. Ready, shoot, aim. We need to do something. And that's important because there's a lot of good things that come out of these kind of like funny blurb that just happen.
Mm-hmm. Although you bring up a completely different point that I think is important, and that's building your team, whether it's staff, advisors, partners, friends that have complementary skills to you.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, we gravitate to people who are like us. So I'm going to, of course, gravitate to other numbers people. And you're going to gravitate to other farmers because, and production people. But having somebody in your circle that has a complementary skill that it's like, okay, well, I may not be the best farmer, but I'm really good at numbers or I'm good at marketing. And
I'm conservative and you're totally not.
Right.
Which is, I need to work with, together because I was a risk taker so it's good to be surrounded by people that are more kind of like grounding, conservative, because otherwise you're all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's, build your team, whether it's workers, partners, friends, to help you have to get you with all the skills. I was listening to your podcast. I forget the gentleman's name from not Sweden. Was it Sweden?
Yeah, Richard Perkins. Richard Perkins.
Yeah, and how you have to know all the things to be a good farmer. Not just production, but marketing and financial, all the labor management, wear all the hats. and you can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
So making sure that, you're good enough to get by, but enhance your operation, your business with people that can help you where you're not as strong.
One of the things this connects the dot with the pivots and whatever, the uncertainty, the need to change. What I've learned is that when we have clear forecasts and that we're looking at numbers, we can see the trends. It's like, okay, it's June and we're already trending down 30%. And will it self-correct in July? If it self-corrects to plus 50, we might be okay. But if it doesn't, then we'll be in a bad spot. And then you need to make the change. Coming back to what you were saying about, when you do your numbers frequently, you have change to self-correct, course correct. And we found that is the game changer for us, because with all the different projects, we might assume that we're doing okay, but we're not totally sure. It's not clear. The trend is slowly going, sideways. But then when you notice it, you can act on it.
Yeah.
That's really the superpower I'm hearing. If I give an analogy to growing, it's kind of like doing your books regularly is kind of like going into the field and looking at each plot and seeing if there's weeds that need handling and then taking care of them. Whereas the alternate world might be that you just hope that your stale seabed was good enough and the canopy was good enough. And at the end of the season, the entire end, you come back and look the one time.
Yeah.
Who knows what could have happened that entire time. And that's what's happening with the business and the money.
And if I can share a
right?
personal story.
That's great analogy.
But it's a little embarrassing. But, I have a little home garden. And, I like to grow kale because, where I am, kale does really well. And, I always have problems with aphids. And, it's like I see the first bits of aphids and I spray Safer soap or whatever to get rid of the aphids. And then by the end of the season, it's just every leaf is just covered. And it's embarrassing because all of your listeners are going to be like, Julia, why didn't you look at your kale like once a week and spray once a week if you still had aphids? And you're like, oh my God. Like I finally figured that out like 3 years ago that I actually need to look at the kale on a regular basis and check for aphids. Otherwise, I'm going to have a problem. And the same is true with cash flow management. It's like you don't just sort of create your budget and walk away. You look at your budget once a week, once every 2 weeks to make sure you're on track, that the aphids aren't coming back. And if the aphids are coming back, you have a plan to rectify the situation and make sure that your plants stay healthy, your business stays healthy. You're talking about a project going sideways in June or sort of that trend. You can see the trend happening and you can say, all right, if it's not fixed in July, I have, 3 weeks to come up with an alternative plan to think about what I'm going to do in July if things haven't.
Yeah, and then pivoted. You can call off that project that you were supposed to start in the fall. You can you make all these decisions that are important, but if you don't know and you're just kind of going on hope.
Yeah, and hoping the aphids go away.
Yeah, aphids. Actually, you can look at your soil mineral balance. That's really how you self-correct aphids.
It's funny because I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I had my little garden and I had aphids. And then I moved into the suburbs and I had a new garden and new soil, and the soil looked beautiful. There are all the worms and amazing. And I still had aphids. So,
they're out there.
Yeah.
They're out there.
No, and I'm a home gardener.
They're like tax. They're always there.
Yeah.
But cash flow, like just to not to steer the pot too much about it, but cash flow is really the killer.
Yeah.
Cash flow problems, like you're not balancing. On papers it works, but in the bank account, the money's not there, and it's so scary.
Well, I think there's a couple of things about that. And the first is just the inherent nature of farming, that it's seasonal cash flow. It's not just seasonal production, but you're paying for things 3 to 6 months before you're getting paid for anything. So you have to be in a position to float that. And if you haven't created a plan that says, I can get to July, I know that to get to July, I need to have this much in the bank in January. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I think one of the things that folks can do is, number one, you create the annual budget. Okay, I project this much revenue, these expenses, therefore I'm going to have this profit. And then you need to break it down by month because you're going to have all your expenses in the beginning and then your revenue is going to come in later. And you can sort of see when you plot out the year, how much money do I need in the bank in January so that I know I can make it through to the end of the year. And then come December, it's not like, woo, I got 60,000, we're going to Hawaii. It's like, oh, wait, no, I need
that.
I need to start the next year with 60,000 or 40,000 or whatever the number is. But know that just because you have cash in the bank doesn't mean you can spend it because you've got to get through the next cycle. So, having a full year cycle and recognizing that money in the bank doesn't mean you've got money to spend. And the value of a cash flow budget is knowing how much you need at each point in time to get yourself to those critical hurdles of, July when the cash flow starts.
So you have two budgets. So you have like the yearly budget and you have the cash flow budget.
Well, the yearly budget could be, you have the budget that you then break down into a monthly cash flow budget.
Okay.
Yes.
Where can we learn this?
Well, you can read The Farmer's Office. I have tutorials in there.
No, honestly, friends, it's a must read. If all that we're talking about is kind of newish to you, this is a good primer.
And I want to also offer, for those of you who do not have the second edition, because I know a lot of people have already bought the first edition, and thank you all very much. There's a lot about the entrepreneurial mindset and sort of addressing all the mental blocks that we all have them. We all have mental blocks that keep us from doing the hard work, from looking at our numbers, from managing people because managing people is hard. So there's a whole section on, how to overcome the challenges to get yourself into the entrepreneurial mindset, because ultimately we're more than farmers. We're more than producers. We're business people. Yes. We're entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs.
And the moment you sold your first head of lettuce, you became an entrepreneur. I heard you say that.
Yes.
I don't remember where, but
that's true.
I thought that was a really great quote.
And that's why farming is not for everyone.
Yeah.
Or owning a farm. I should say that because farming is for everyone, but owning and running a farm
or
is
farming
not.
versus gardening. Like the difference is the transaction.
And you're a business person, you know, and the thing is, it's funny. I was talking with a farmer who just hated selling, and he was just looking for the easiest sales channel. And, it's like on the one hand, he was looking for the easiest sales channel, and he was really struggling to sell his product. And it was painful to see how he was not selling his product. But he's like, but I can't go back to the office job. The office job is horrible. And I'm like, all right, how much does the office job suck? What percentage of the time does the office job suck? And, he's like, 80% of the time. It's like, okay, how much time are you selling? How much time are you going to spend doing sucky things, working for yourself? Because you're not going to avoid sucky things. The goal is just to make it suck less.
Yes.
That's a good point.
If you don't want to do the things that are required of entrepreneurship, you can work for somebody else. You're just going to have different sucky things. You're going to have a boss. You're going to have to work on their schedule. You're going to have less control of your time. So you can, pick your poison, if you will. But, there's going to be things that suck about all of it. And you can decide what you're willing to tolerate. And if you don't want to tolerate the numbers, then maybe you work for somebody else and you can still farm.
So you can't have it all?
No. No, it's true. It's true. And, I think about, my work and, it's like I've made choices in my work that I'm not generating as much revenue as I want because of certain decisions I've made. If revenue and profit and take home was the most important thing, I'd be a lawyer or a doctor.
You'd be in the aviation
sector. Although I'm not actually, sorry. We're going to cut that off.
But it's good because I think you have, it's not just a niche. It's, how can I say that? We're growing a movement. We have this big idea where we're replacing, mass production with production by the masses. But we need to educate all these new farmers about reality of farming and business and numbers.
If we want to make this movement succeed, people need to be able to sustain themselves. So, you need to be able to earn a profit that is sustainable for the life that you want to live. to be able to keep doing this. And I think about this farmer that I was working with recently, and we were working on her cash flow budget, and she was debating, moving the farm to different property because of whatever. And she's like, I don't think I can do this for more than 15 years. I'm burnt out already, and by the time I'm 45, I'm just like, I can't keep doing this. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, why not build a business that you can do for a long time?
Yeah.
If you're sort of on a path to burnout, then this is not the
Pivot.
Yeah, this is the pivot. But it goes back to your earlier question. What do you tell a farmer who's just starting out? It's like, all right, let's build the business that you want, that you desire, and make sure that it aligns with your quality of life and that it's something that you can do for the long term. Because if we want to make a sustainable movement of small market gardeners,
they can't all burn out.
They can't burn out. And, and truthfully, if they're burnt out, a developer is going to come along and say, I'm going to give you, $1 million for your land. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, for sure.
But, if it's a sustainable and joyful way of life, then you want to keep doing it and you can keep doing it. So we need to provide the tools for farmers to be profitable.
Can you help me figure out the cost to produce one tomato on my farm? I ask this because I feel like that's something that larger scale things tend to be really good at. Like they can calculate the cost of the most minute thing. But I feel like for a market garden, a lot of us, maybe we find that harder to do, or I don't even know if we need to do it. But, I know how many pounds of tomatoes I sold for the whole year, for instance.
Right.
But I want to understand how much it costs me to grow just a single heirloom tomato.
So the value in knowing how much it costs you to grow is to make sure that you have pricing that's appropriate.
Right, exactly.
So I just wanted to clarify that it's not just like an exercise of pushing numbers.
And maybe I should say a pound. I mean, I say a tomato. I'm
right.
Kind of
or a pound or a case or whatever. But the goal is that you're pricing your tomatoes in a way that helps you generate profit for the business. So for the tomatoes, we want to think about all the costs of getting the tomato into the ground and all the costs to get the tomatoes out of the ground. Now, you're not going to track every expense. Certainly the seed expense, it's like, okay, that was tomato seeds. I can look at my...
that's obvious, right?
That one is obvious. And the rest we're going to have to sort of spitball. You can look at your soil amendments or your seed trays, the stakes that you have, the twine that you need,
divide this by the number of crops.
Exactly. So you can extrapolate. And then the second thing that you need to do is, these are the direct costs. You need to factor in your labor. And I think this is where a lot of farmers get themselves into trouble is like, well, I'm not paying myself. Like my labor is free. I don't need to put my labor into the cost calculation.
And I find that hard because sometimes it's hard to delineate exactly how much time was actually spent on just that thing.
Right.
Because,
So,
you're in the greenhouse, you're doing stuff, but it's for 3 crops.
You need to ballpark it.
Yeah, absolutely ballpark. But it's so important that you factor in your labor.
Your labor.
Because otherwise you're never going to be able to generate a profit because, you're not going to build in your cost to be able to take money out of the business. You're not going to build in the cost to hire employees because your pricing is based on free labor. And that's not a sustainable model. So, but yeah, you need to kind of spitball the numbers. If you time yourself, like how long does it take me to fill a seed tray?
Right.
How many, I know that on average it takes me, 3 minutes to do a seed
Yeah,
tray.
you average in a day how much time you spend on this crop in a week, in a month.
And it's like, all right, how long does it take me to harvest a row of tomatoes? Now I know that I have this many rows and I'm going to harvest this many times a week over this many weeks. And you can multiply it out by, $20 or $25 an hour, whatever your number. But it's really important to put in the labor.
Okay.
So you can get your total cost, your yield. So then you can say total cost divided by yield is my unit price.
Okay.
And then you can say, does that work with my pricing structure?
The thing is, you can't really change your pricing structure. You can't, we don't live in a world where the pricing is coordinated with your cost of production. It's like $5 a pound, $6 a pound is what you'll get.
Yeah, then you have to decide what you can do to reduce your costs. by, improving yields, increasing efficiencies, and maybe there is a little wiggle room. I think that a lot of times farmers are hesitant to raise their prices because they don't assign enough value, that they look at, the big chain supermarket and they're selling tomatoes at $3 a pound. And it's like, who am I to sell it at $6 a pound? But, the farmer's market or the supermarket tomatoes are a boring variety that were picked green.
They might be sold at a loss.
Yeah.
It might be a loss leader. That happens a lot. Before we continue, friends, I want to tell you about New Society Publishers. New Society is not your average publisher. Their focus is on positive impact. Their books cover important issues like climate action, food justice, and sustainable farming, and they practice what they preach. They are a certified B Corporation, certified carbon neutral, and they print on recycled paper. They published my first book, The Market Gardener, which has brought thousands of people to the world of small-scale farming. And with their extensive collections of books, including popular titles like The Seed Farmer from my good friend Dan Brisebois or Coppice Agroforestry, you too can learn to garden, farm, or live a greener life. Hop over to newsociety.com, check out their books, and use the promo code MARKET25 for 25% off on all of their books. This is a sweet deal, friends. New Society Publishers, cultivating change one page at a time.
That is true also, yeah.
So, they do that.
Right, of course. And, Thanksgiving turkeys are sort of the quintessential in the U.S. They sell Thanksgiving turkeys at 69 cents a pound so that you come in and buy everything else for your Thanksgiving dinner. So you don't know their pricing structure. The farmers that are selling to the supermarkets are growing at a scale that with efficiencies that small scale farmers don't have. But the small scale farmers can grow more interesting varieties, more flavorful varieties that are, field grown instead of hydroponic or hothouse or, whatever. So, communicating the value that we're providing to our customers. The reason why this tomato is more expensive is because of XYZ. And so we need to also get better at communicating that value because we're not selling commodities. We're selling a value-added product.
A story.
Yes, a
You
story.
just brought up marketing and branding. Is that something you teach much about or help people with much?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously I understand the concepts of marketing and branding, but that's definitely a specialty in its own. And, it's an important one. And one thing I think about, and this relates to restaurants. If you go out to a restaurant and you have incredible service, the food can be mediocre. If you go to a restaurant that has amazing food and mediocre service, you're just not going to go back.
Yeah, you're dead.
You're dead. And, service can save bad food. Great food cannot save bad service. And I think the same is true in farming, that great branding and great marketing can cover a lot. It's obviously not going to do everything, but you do need to have good marketing and good branding because that can cover up a lot. But certainly you need the good food behind it to be sustainable.
Do you see the future in crystal ball? These small farms, are they geared to be there for a long time? Are we growing the numbers of small farms? Are we winning? What do you see with all of that?
Well, it's funny. It goes back to the first question you asked about the difference between the farm that's looking at the numbers, and the farmer that is not looking at their numbers. And the farmers, and I see this in the farmers that I work with, that the farmers that are looking at their numbers have a level of calm, and there is a sustainability to this and a longevity to this that, if they can be profitable and they're looking at their numbers, they can do this for a long time. And it's when you're scrambling and hustling and, spinning your wheels, trying to make something work, that's when it becomes difficult. But, I know you talk often about the movement that you're building, and I think it's so important, especially in today's economy where, supply chains are disrupted and, cross-border tariffs, and having self-sufficiency in our own communities is so important. And I think that, and COVID proved this also, that having a local food shed is what's making us sustainable and resilient. So it is super important. And I just want to help the small farmers succeed.
Check your numbers.
Yes.
The revolution that's like the force.
Yeah. So,
It's like
this
the
is
force
my
of the
little...
rebellion is the numbers.
there's so
Yeah.
much to running a good business. There's the production, which obviously you are teaching
helping.
farmers about. And then there's the labor management. There's the sales and marketing. You need to be able to grow crops in a profitable way for customers that want to buy them at the price that you need to sell them in a way that generates the profits. And, that requires the vision and the leadership and the big picture. But, you need all 4 pieces.
Let's say we're making the argument that small scale farmers can make a really good living wage. Okay, this is an argument that I try to make often. And coming back to that, what the net in your pocket, but all the other things that are paid for by your small farm business.
Yep.
Do you see that sometimes? And you're like, when you crunch everything, you're like, in the end, it's like, people are complaining that they're not making enough on farms, but they're paying for land that's taking a lot of value. They're building their capital that way. They're paying for all these expenditures. They don't pay tax on, back here in Quebec, we're not paying tax on anything because we're selling goods that don't have tax, so we can reclaim all our taxes on all our expense.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's and if you add all these things up, in the end, you're like, we're making. I don't want to overkill it, but it's like it's pretty good.
Yeah, and and I think about that in my business too. It's like, my business is paying for my phone. My business pays for 25% because I have a home office. My business pays for the health insurance, and and if I'm on a farm, it's like, how much do I not pay in groceries because I have my own food? So there is a lot of secondary reward in having your own business, and it does cover a lot of the expenses. And I said insurance. I feel like that was not a good one for at least the United States farmers. But the farm does cover a lot of the household expenses that we sort of overlook. And, maybe you're earning $25K from the farm, but if you are not farming, you might need to earn $35 or $40K because the farm provides so much benefit to the family. So it is true that the numbers shake out differently when you're on a farm. But it's important to, really lay out what you need. We were talking about the take-home goal and being really clear, what do you need to survive? And not survive, but thrive and,
be happy,
live a wholehearted life. What do you need, to maintain the basic living expenses of, food, shelter, and clothing? But also, what do you need to go on vacation or enjoy a meal out or go to the movies or...
Yeah, put money aside for retirement.
Retirement,
yeah,
wow.
That was one chapter.
Ooh-wee. Yeah.
We talk about that, retirement. It's so important. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
And retirement and saving, putting money aside for university, for your kids. Like, I remember we were living in a teepee and we were putting 30% of what we were earning to college education.
So I want if we can digress for a minute about retirement.
Yeah.
A lot of farmers have been advised, like if they have profits in the farm, like, okay, don't want to pay taxes, so I want to minimize my profits. So if I have any profits, I'm going to purchase equipment.
Yeah.
And that is just not a great strategy.
I agree.
Because farmers are buying equipment that they don't necessarily need. And I'd rather you have, if your profit was $10,000, I'd rather you have $8,000 in your bank and pay $2,000 in cash than have none of that.
Exactly.
But the other thing that is a really effective strategy, which and I can't remember who told me it, I did not come up with this on my own, but you can also put away your profits for retirement savings, put it in a 401k or an IRA account, and it's tax-free. So you can save for retirement and avoid paying taxes and not buy equipment that you don't need just to avoid paying taxes. So if you have profits...
Everyone needs to be doing that. That should be the mandatory step is like, that's part of your goals. Like you need to put X amount per year in these 401k. Like we don't have these in Canada.
Yeah,
but
well,
it's the
no,
same thing.
And actually 401k isn't correct. 401,
But it's this idea of tax deferment, and then, having retirement money, because otherwise what happens in 25 years?
I know.
Like,
well, and
you're going to be...
A lot of young farmers do not think about that.
Well, the other thing, though, you talk about building this movement, and the value of saving for retirement is that you're not relying on selling your land to retire. Because if your land is your retirement fund, then you need to sell it to a developer who's going to...
And then you're going to live in a condo.
Right. Well, yeah. But also one of the reasons why land is so expensive is because it's all being converted into houses and developments and buildings, and we have less free land. And so the more land we can keep in agricultural production, the better it's going to be for all of us, because we still need food.
Yeah.
So, building a retirement so that you don't have to sell your land to a developer to retire, I think is aspirational, but...
It's tough, because... Let's say we have, 5 young farmers in front of us and we're trying to help them. There's so many things.
Yeah.
You can be helping them with crop management, with labor, but in the end, all these things matter. Like when I was giving you my example of when we were living in a teepee, the government was paying 50%. They were matching 50% of what you were putting aside for university for your kids.
Oh, that's amazing.
So they were matching 50%. So for me, I was like, I need to put, like, it's a no-brainer. And then plus that money is invested. And then at the end, you get 5, 6, 7, 10% of the...
Yeah.
So, like, these incentives for young people to...
Yeah, and it's funny, I think about when farmers decide to start, because I know when I started my first business when I was 27, and I was able to keep my living expenses to $1,000 a month. I was starting my catering business, and I didn't need a lot to make it work. And as you get older, it just gets a little bit harder.
Yeah, to live simply.
Yeah, so take advantage of the time when you're young and you can live simply. Because I think about so many of the farmers that I work with, the ones that are scrappy and live simply for the first few years to get their sea legs, get their feet under them to grow, are better positioned for sustainable growth. And that's what we're going for, sustainable growth.
Did we convince you, Chris, about starting this new farm project?
Well, it wasn't me. It was a hypothetical person.
But did that hypothetical Chris, is he more on board?
I think the hypothetical listener that feels that way is now thinking to themselves, okay, I definitely need to figure out how much money I want to make. And I think that was a brilliant first question, because if you can't even answer that, then I don't know, how do you know where to go at all?
And then how much money you need to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And then that alone will be like, okay, I can't just work 10 hours a week and make a few mushrooms. Like I need to go, I don't know. That was a great starting point. I think that's a nice, I don't know, as someone that's not planning to start a farm, and as someone that isn't a farmer right now, I'm a good example of kind of the listener that is in that position of they're not already a farmer. So they're they're not a business person.
They're dreamers.
So a lot of
they
this
dream
is
about
new,
the farms.
and they're not thinking about these terms all the time. And I know those people are out there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we spoke to them.
Do we want to do rapid fire?
Yep.
Are you familiar with rapid fire?
I am, and the one question I'm dreading is, what book am I reading right now?
Well, it's not exactly that, but I can give you two versions. So two versions of the question.
You can say pass if it's like you're not up for it.
Yeah. Okay? Well, I just wanted to say, now that I've sort of said it, I feel like I need to finish the sentence that reading is escape for me. So I'm not reading. Like I know, like, all your listeners and guests are reading really interesting books.
But you're not?
No, not we have quite a few people that it was fantasy, they told us, or novels.
Oh, good.
So reading for you is escape.
Yeah.
So you read things to kind of like
calm
like
down.
I watch hockey to just kind of like chill out.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I get it. Well,
interesting.
Fiction is good for
and
relaxation,
it's
I find.
because if you watch TV, you get distracted by ads, and you're there's still that bombardment of
yes.
And reading is just very calming and quiet.
100%. So, what is either a book you've read multiple times, or if you'd rather, one that you think a lot about in recent time that keeps coming back to your mind? You're often thinking about it.
I would say Barbara Kingsolver's book Prodigal Summer, which I think is the first book I read that sort of clarified the harmony of nature and how it's all integrated with the animals and the soil and the care that we take for our environment. And I think that was sort of what got me into environmentalism, if you will.
Is it a novel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the first time her name pops up here?
It
Barbara
sounds kind of familiar,
Kingsolver.
but I could
She's
be wrong.
written a few really good books.
And her book, Animal Vegetable Miracle, was about living off the land for a year. That was a nonfiction story of her family, which was also pivotal. So I've really enjoyed her books.
And the first one you read when? Like how long ago?
20 years ago.
Okay, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. What's advice you heard when you were really young, but you only appreciated much later in life?
When in doubt, do the kind thing. And I think that, it's general advice just to be kind to people, but I think truthfully, it's a really good business strategy. When you're kind to people, to your customers, I think it just, you provide a good feeling and people want to work with you. And it's a lot easier to do business when you're kind to your customers, to your vendors, to your employees.
And why might younger you have not fully heeded that advice?
It's not that I didn't heed it, but I don't know that I fully appreciated the value as a business owner. And I think, it sort of ties into, when you're stressed and when you're stressed about money, it's harder to do the kind thing. I know in my business, in catering, I've had my cycles of business. And when I'm in a down cycle, I get really stressed and I'm pushy with my customers. I'm pushy with payments. I'm pushy with pricing. And it's not good customer relations. And if you can sort of take a breath and what's the kind thing to do, it does resolve itself and it's makes life in business easier.
What's advice you give often to people?
Don't worry so much. Actually, that's the advice. That was the other bit of advice I give to myself, or I wish I had taken sooner, was don't worry so much. But
that's something that came with maturity, realizing that you shouldn't worry so much?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it goes back to an earlier point that I think we spend a lot of excess energy on worry and, if our house isn't clean, you were talking about the dust building up and scrambling to find things and, kind of calming our minds so that we can, expel the excess energy that we're spending so that we can be more focused and joyful on the important things.
Was it learn to do the fast things fast so you have time to do the slow things slow, right?
Oh, I love that.
Line.
Me too. First time I hear that.
Benjamin Farr said it on the podcast.
Oh, second time I hear that. Sorry, Benjamin.
Second time. Well, I spend a lot of time listening back to these things. What are people not talking about enough?
In farming, I think people are not talking about profit enough. I think, people get focused on revenue. And I think the other thing people are not talking about enough is profit per hour. And thinking about our opportunity cost and how we can spend our time most effectively, because we have limited resources. The two most limited are time and money. And we think a lot about the money resource, and I don't think we think as much about the time resource and making sure that we're being most effective and profitable in how we spend our time in business.
What's a nature experience that really sticks out in your memory, in your life?
The first time I had an organic strawberry, and the first time I tasted frostbitten spinach.
Nice.
And I realized that spinach was actually delicious.
Which was when was this?
This was the strawberry was probably, and I'm going to date myself, but the the first time I had an organic strawberry was like 35 years ago. And then I think the spinach was probably 25 years ago. But, I think that tasting fresh food, like right from the source, appropriately ripened, I'm a foodie at heart. So
You can't beat it.
That was probably at the farm to table restaurant or around that time?
Actually, before that. When I grew up in D.C. and the farm to table restaurant was the fancy restaurant in town. So I was my mother was shopping at farmers markets in the 70s. And so I was learning all about fresh local back then, even though I didn't really realize it was trendy or whatever. Just it's what we did.
Yeah. And what's the best food experience of your last year or so, would you say? Or just one that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, well, aside from dinner last night at...
Yeah, you guys had a good meal?
Oh, amazing.
Great.
So delicious. So good. Actually, there's a lot of highlights last night. I don't need... if we can spend some time later, but I think Blue Hill at Stone Barns is an extraordinary experience as well. So many dishes there. You're just like, wow. So yeah, I feel like I've eaten a lot of really good food.
I bet you have. You're a foodie.
That's the best though, eh?
Yeah.
These are memorable times.
And then there's a restaurant in the Boston area called Nightshade Noodle Bar. And they're just it's Vietnamese, French, and they're just doing the most interesting things with sea urchin and sticky rice. And there's a dish with duck tongue kabocha.
Squash.
Squash. How do you say that?
Karunga. I'm pass.
Okay. Duck tongue, squash, and Vietnamese rice cakes. And who would think that?
Wow.
It's just an extraordinary dish.
Wow.
So
we should have a question about your most favorite restaurant place to go to.
Yeah.
Taking notes, Boston area.
Yeah.
What's a difficult decision in your life that sticks out to you because at the time it was so hard, but then it actually turned out for the best in the long run?
I feel like I've had so many difficult decisions, but it's all, just...
Well, you've changed career, I guess, a few times. Were any of those moments really tough to make the change? Or?
It's like it's on the one hand, I'm risk averse, but I'm also not an overthinker. So, I remember when I switched into the culinary industry, I was at a carryout restaurant waiting for my order, and I saw an issue of a magazine called Restaurants and Institutions, and I saw an advertisement for culinary school. And at the time I was applying for a job with an airline, and I was applying for culinary school, and I went to culinary school, and I didn't think too hard, and it all worked out.
And what about a top failure? Felt like a mess at the time, but then it actually turned out for the best afterwards.
Well, I don't know if this is a top failure, but it was one of my failures when I had my catering business and going back to being stressed about money. And I took a job that I should not have taken. Somebody had requested that I make tea sandwiches, and they had been quoted a price of, $12 a person, and he wanted me to do it for $6 a person, and I was hungry, and I accepted the job. And tea sandwiches are really hard to do nicely and economically because, you got to cut off the crust of the bread and have them even, and you have a lot of waste, cutting the pretty little squares. And I was trying to do it for $6 a person, and I didn't have any repository for the bread scraps for another catering event or whatever. Needless to say, my sandwiches were not beautiful. And I got a nasty, nasty letter from the client who said, if you call yourself a professional caterer, you should be run out of town in a roasting pan, which is funny.
Goodness.
But at the time, it was really painful. And it was an important lesson that no matter how hungry I am, make sure that I focus on doing what I do well and what I know I can do well, and not just take anything that comes my way because I'm hungry. You lose focus, and you do things that you don't enjoy, and then you're not available for the things that you do enjoy.
Last question. What's something that you're interested in that's totally different, separate from what we've talked about today?
Fun fact about yourself.
I think I want a career or I shouldn't say a career. I think the next thing I want to pursue is photography.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is great.
All right. Well,
this is great.
I think that I have a hidden talent in photography. Do not look at my Instagram feed because you will not see any hidden talent. But
there's a lot more books you could write in the same title: the business person's garden, the photographer's.
Well, and actually, if you know any publishers who wants to do the sequel, because I think there's the chef's office, the plumber's office, the graphic designer's office. I think that there's a whole series of
that's a good point.
offices.
When talking about Instagram, people can go on your website, thefarmersoffice.com.
Yep. And I should promote also, I do have online courses.
Okay.
So, we talked about learning styles and, how people learn differently. Some people learn by reading. The book is fantastic. If you learn by listening and watching, the video tutorials on my website are really terrific for that kind of learner. And truthfully, it goes into more detail than I do in the book.
Julia, thank you for being part of our movement. Thank you for the work you're doing. And thank you for being present with us today. It was a great talk.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a ton of fun.
Yeah. All right. That's it, everyone. I hope you guys liked this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. We're growing the movement. We're having these great conversations. We'll see you next time. We're out. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to it, download the episodes, and please rate them. It makes a difference for us. We want to know what you think about these conversations. They're important. Check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, thank you for tuning in. Super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.